listening to Diasporic music on Black Power 96. We just completed the Jazz Zone with T in Providence, and we're getting ready to interview Dr. Gerald Horne. Dr. Gerald Horne is the John J. and Rebecca Moore Chair of History and African American Studies at the University of Houston. He also is the author of a couple of new books, Acknowledging Radical Histories, and he also has another book out called I Dare Say, the Gerald Horne Reader, and he will be doing a started to say a pop-up, but he'll be doing will it be a teach-in, a lot of things will be taking place in Lamert Park in Los Angeles on February the 3rd, and I'm sure he'll elaborate on that. But Dr. Horne is been a guest on Diasporic Music for many, many moons. And Dr. Horne, how are you doing today?
Oh, fine, thank you. And let me just say about Lamert Park, or Africa Town, to use the other name. You can find details on the website of kpfk.org. It's a benefit for the Pacifica station in the City of the Angels. Or alternatively, you can find it on my own Facebook page.
And Africa Park, or Lamert Park, was a place that a lot of people lived before they moved to Baldwin Hills, which is the so-called, I shouldn't say this, but the Black Beverly Hills, or Beverly Hills. Lamert Park was a spot that many of the money people lived. I know Sam Cooke lived in Lamert Park for a time, and I still have family members living in Lamert Park. Many family members. There's so many I don't even want to talk about it. But how are you doing today, my friend?
It's all good.
I guess the first thing we wanted to talk about is this ruling, the ICJ ruling in with South Africa and in Israel. I was listening to a right wing for the Zionists. There's a station up here, and they give the Zionists a spot on one of the radio shows, which I will not name the station, but they are crying the blues, my friend. You would think that Justin Trudeau was Adolf Hitler if you listen to that station. How's the reaction been worldwide?
Well, I think that the consensus is that it's a setback for Israel and its promoters in the North Atlantic community. And it also reflects a shift in the global correlation of forces, the global balance of forces, in an anti-imperialist direction, albeit a nudge in an anti-imperialist direction, as opposed to a sweeping conquest in an anti-imperialist direction. But of course, imperialism is still potent, and it may be premature as of January 2024 to expect a conquest. But we should not downplay the significance of it. We should not downplay the significance of the fact that it's South Africa that brought this case against Israel. I think that reality alone vindicates the anti-apartheid movement, those of us who shed blood, sweat, and tears for so many years to deliver a victory for Nelson Mandela in 1994. I think as well that in terms of assessing this victory, which basically says there was a plausible case for genocide made out by the South African petitioners, and that Israel has a case to answer, they must come back to the court in a month and submit a detailed account of what they have done to adhere to humanitarian norms in Gaza, of course, the Israelis have struck back. That is to say, that they have been able to place the United Nations in a position where the United Nations felt compelled to fire a number of its staff dealing with Palestinian refugees on the premise that the staff was involved on October 7th. As a result, the United States has withdrawn aid to this particular UN agency, as well as Canada, if I'm not mistaken. At the same time, NBC News in the United States reports that the Biden administration is considering a pause in delivering military materiel to Israel. If that proves to be the case, that will be significant. And even if it does not prove to be the case, it's significant that this has been leaked to NBC News, presumably at the behest of the White House, presumably to put pressure on the Netanyahu regime, which has been striking back with a vengeance, not only denouncing the International Court of Justice, but also denouncing Egypt and Jordan and Qatar as being dupes of Hamas, allegedly. This is very serious. Keep in mind that after Israel delivers its presumed detailed report to the International Court of Justice, if it's not up to snuff, the ICJ can then refer the whole matter to the Security Council. And then the scuttlebutt is that the United States, instead of vetoing, may consider an abstention, which would be significant. Let's see what happens. We may get a reading as soon as 30 days from now, by the end of February 2024. And even if the U.S. wields its veto, there is an oftentimes neglected maneuver, the so-called United for Peace formula, that allows precise language to be submitted to the General Assembly of the United Nations, 190 nations plus, and that could lead to sanctions against Israel. Already there's talk about expelling Israel from the United Nations, just like apartheid South Africa was expelled from the United Nations. I think we should also deal with some of the legal issues. For example, the court dismissed the idea that they did not have jurisdiction. They certainly do have jurisdiction. They also ruled that there was a dispute, and certainly there was a dispute between two member states, speaking of South Africa and the United States of America. Excuse me, South Africa and Israel. Obviously, there was a Freudian slip, since Israel is sort of cat's paw for the United States of America. We should also mention the fact that wielded against Israel was the inflammatory language by many members of the war cabinet, such as Minister Gallant, who early on spoke of the Palestinians as being human animals, quote unquote. That helps to supply the requisite intent for genocide. Also, the United States and Israel routinely thumb its nose at the United Nations, but the ICJ relied heavily upon reports and documentation from the United Nations. And I think that the imperialists would be well advised to pay attention. Now, most of the votes on all of the different counts were either 15-2 or 16-1. Even the United States judge, who comes out of the State Department, was part of the majority. Now, of course, remarkably, the main dissenter was the judge from Uganda, the only Black woman on the bench. She was renounced and denounced by her government, although we need to know why she chose to act in such a hostile manner towards the Palestinians. Certainly, I think that irrespective of what Israel does, this opinion by the ICJ is a weapon in the hands of the pro-ceasefire movement in North America. It's a weapon in the hand of the anti-war movement. Also, keep in mind that South Africa may have to pay a price if U.S. imperialism has anything to do with it. Right before the decision was rendered, you saw that Secretary of State Anthony Blinken was in Angola, Southwest Africa. We know that in the 1970s, U.S. imperialism sought to prevent the independence of Angola and then sponsored a war against the ruling party and the country that only culminated with the defeat of the pirates about 2 decades ago. But now it's apparent that U.S. imperialism would like to somehow manipulate Angola against South Africa. I don't think that that will work, but we should be alert to it. And in that regard, keep in mind that the U.S. ambassador in Angola is a man with roots in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Now, that brings up another issue, if I may digress for a moment before coming back to the main thread. It's apparent that the U.S. ruling class would like to exploit Black talent and intelligence on behalf of the imperial project. That's the implication of this U.S. ambassador in Luanda, Angola, being of Congolese heritage. I mean, let's get right to the point. That's the implication of the Obama presidency. That's the implication of Colin Powell becoming head of the U.S. military and then Secretary of State. I mean, I could go on in this vein. Your audience, I'm sure, are familiar with the names: Condoleezza Rice, Susan Rice, Speaker in waiting, Hakeem Jeffries, for example, from Brooklyn, known as Hakeem the Dream on Wall Street, but Hakeem the Nightmare in certain Black precincts of Brooklyn. But the contradiction right now is that the Trump base, mostly disproportionately, overwhelmingly, Euro-American middle class and working class, their major issue that they're clamoring against is so-called diversity, equity, and inclusion and affirmative action. That is to say, what the ruling class has been able to capitalize on by drawing Black talent into the highest levels of society. And it's going to be difficult for that contradiction to be resolved. What I expect is that the ruling class will capitulate. Already, you see that affirmative action attempts to bring more Black and other students of color into universities. It's being circumscribed. Elon Musk, of apartheid South African heritage, has been clamoring of late against historically Black colleges and universities as if he wants them to be shut down. So the problem, of course, also is that our friends on the left find it difficult to understand that particular coalition, whereby the base supplies foot soldiers and votes so that the 1%, the elite, can get tax cuts, which then means the government has less money to even attend to the basic needs of the Trump base, not to mention the basic needs of the Black working class. Their theory of the case is that the Trump base are all social democrats in waiting, and that the reason that they turn to the right is because they don't see a social democratic alternative. But then this helps to convert U.S. politics into a story of whiteness, because obviously the Black working class is not turned to the same degree to the right, and it makes the Black working class look like chumps, and the Trump base look like visionaries, which turns politics on its head. Part of the problem is they don't want to see the essence of settler colonialism, a term that's curiously and conspicuously absent from the vocabularies of many. Settler colonialism from its inception involved class collaboration, and class collaboration is what you see today in this ungodly coalition between the Trump base and the 1%. And so as the clamor arises against impending fascism, there's little understanding of why impending fascism is a subject for discussion. And to get back to the ICJ opinion, one of the issues that we also should mention is that the Zionist billionaires who have been quite prominent in this whole controversy, helping to sack the president of Harvard University, a woman of Haitian descent, Claudine Gay, helping to shut down discourse on campuses across the country, they don't seem to recognize that a significant percentage of the ultra-right is hostile to Israel. Recall how I mentioned in my neighborhood in Houston just a few days ago, there was a Nazi demonstration, two slogans, "Make America White Again" and "Down with Jewish Supremacy," believe it or not. And there's a real danger that as US imperialism begins to lose altitude, which surely it will, and surely that is happening, that's the implication, that's the import of the ICJ opinion, that the Zionists may be scapegoated. And this will not be good news for the Jewish community writ large, not to mention not good news for the rest of us. So this is the state of play as we speak. Once again, the ICJ opinion was very significant. We should be in the position of claiming victories since they're not necessarily frequent. And this was a victory and a blow against US imperialism.
You're listening to Diasporic Music with Melinda Francis, Norman Richmond. We have on the line Dr. Gerald Horne. Now, it is curious to me that two of the most, Peter Tosh was one of the biggest supporters of the Palestinians. He refused to, he was going to perform in Israel, and some people who I know personally convinced him not to go. And Robert Nesta Marley, as far as I know, never went to Israel, and I can't speak on his position on. I don't think he would have went. But it's ironically, both of their sons, Andrew Tosh, is going to Israel, wants to go to Israel. He's arguing that his father, if his father were alive, he would be performing in Israel. And Bob Marley's eldest son, Ziggy Marley, is a big supporter of Israel. Could you speak on that?
Well, unfortunately, they're not alone. I mean, there's a lot of pressure from the Zionist lobby. People are losing their careers, they're losing their livelihoods. If you look at the New York City leadership, they have been in the forefront of giving lip service and more to this genocidal campaign that's being carried out in Gaza. I mentioned Hakeem Jeffries. I could have mentioned the well-compensated commentator, the Reverend Al Sharpton. I could have mentioned Mayor Eric Adams. I could have mentioned the ranking member, Democratic member on the House Foreign Affairs Committee, Gregory Meeks of Southeast Queens. So Ziggy Marley and these other characters, they're not alone. And someone should have a word with them to acquaint them with the reality that they're doing a disservice to their fans, at least their fans of African descent, and perhaps others as well.
I want to get off this real quick, but what are your thoughts on this film on Bob Marley? I think it's going to hit on February the 14th, I believe.
Well, I haven't seen it, so I can't comment. Although, as of this weekend, next weekend, I'll be in Los Angeles in part for the Pan-African Film Festival, PAFF.org, and I'll be bringing reports to your listeners about some of the films. Already I've circled to see a film about Amiri Baraka, the late poet and novelist and playwright and activist, a documentary about Max Roach, the late drummer. So it's a stellar lineup as usual. And I also plan to see some films that have been released nationally, if not globally, including the latest by Ava DuVernay, Origin, which is a filmic representation of the book by the Black journalist Isabel Wilkerson, which is an investigation of caste, C-A-S-T-E, which, as you know, is popularly associated with India. You may recall that the late Trinidadian scholar Oliver Cox
Yes,
wrote a
sir.
book called Caste, Class, and Race. And I'm looking forward to see what she does with this film. Apparently, it was filmed in part in India, dramatizations, animation. And Ava DuVernay is a former publicist. And she's put her talent in that field to good use because she's popping up all over the media, at least in the United States, promoting this film. And so it'll be interesting to see what the box office receipts reveal as of Monday.
Be curious. I heard her. She was in a heated. Well, she wasn't. There wasn't a debate, but Jared Ball was really taking her to task on one of his shows recently. Jared Ball on Black Power Media. He has some issues with her on a number of issues, but
such as
well, he thinks that it is it's not hitting hard enough. It's too soft, basically.
You mean the Cass movie?
Yeah.
So he saw the Cass movie. They met on. Let me be clear. They met on a plane, and they took a plane together. And it wasn't necessarily about the film, just the film alone. It was basically about her politics, essentially. Let me get it straight. It was Jared Ball is at one point they attempted to they had some criticisms of you, which I think they sort of retreated on a lot of that. If I'm not mistaken, I believe they retreated on a lot of that. Well, we shall see.
I think before we go off a little bit more, should we get into Germany?
Well, Germany's in turmoil. The economy is sinking. The ultra-right, the so-called Alternative for Germany, the neo-Nazis, they're rising. Farmers have been protesting. New political parties on the left have sprouted, which of course is good news. Part of the problem, as you know, is that Germany is an occupied country. Almost 80 years after the end of World War II, it's still festooned with U.S. military bases. AFRICOM, the so-called Africa Command of the U.S. War Department, is based in Stuttgart in the Federal Republic of Germany. The U.S. has a very toxic impact on the German foreign policy, to be sure, but also I would say on Germany's internal politics. Interestingly enough, in the book that I'll be previewing on Saturday, 1 to 3 in Africatown, Leimert Park, I'll be talking about the fact that when the Black Panther Party had its heyday in Algiers, they spent a lot of time in and out of Germany, rallying Black soldiers and protesting against racism of Black soldiers, I should also say that my late older sister was residing in Germany at that time because she married a military guy, a U.S. military guy. And in fact, their second born was actually born in the Federal Republic of Germany. So I've been following German politics, I guess, since I was a youth, and continue to follow German politics.
Mm-hmm. And in Germany, I think that there was a brother by the name of Glanton Dowdell who was in the League of Revolutionary Black Workers. He was in prison for many, many, many years. He founded the League. He was one of the founding members with General Gordon Baker. I believe he went into exile in Germany, if I'm not mistaken. No, pardon me. I know my geography. He had to go to Sweden, not Germany. What's his name? John Watson. Many members of the League went to Germany and made contacts with, I guess, progressive forces in Germany. There, let me get that straight. Yeah. Are you familiar with Glanton Dowdell, Dr. Horne?
No, I'm not, but it's interesting.
He did the shrine. He painted the shrine of the Black Madonna. That's his. I'm gonna go ahead.
Well, I was in Germany right before the liquidation of socialist East Germany, the German Democratic Republic. And in fact, I've been interviewed a number of times because when I was there, this is June 1989, I spoke at length to the late Ollie Harrington, who was a prominent Black artist, cartoonist. I recommend his cartoons to this very day. And he, of course, was friendly with Richard Wright, the late Black novelist, because he was in and out of Paris quite a bit. But he was residing in East Berlin when I spoke to him. And he's now become a subject for scholarship, interestingly enough.
Well, I remember the first time I saw you, the second time I saw you, when the first time I heard you speak, you talked about him. I think you spoke at a hotel on Queen Street here in Toronto. You were mentioning. You were talking. That was one of the things you mentioned him in that speech. I think you made it at the New Sheraton Hotel, one of the big hotels here where you spoke. The first time I heard you speak, you were talking about Mr. Harrington way back then. Does he have any children, or is his children carrying on?
Well,
his
I don't know. I'm not sure. Either I don't know or I can't recall.
Mm-hmm.
That's either response.
Melinda, I guess we have time for probably one more question.
Yeah, we have time for one more question. Let's talk about no deployment of Kenya in Haiti.
Well, that's been the latest. As you know, Haiti has been in turmoil since the assassination of the president. I guess it's 3 years ago now, or 2.5 years ago. And you now have a leader, Ariel Henry, who is deemed to be, shall we say, unpopular. And the latest maneuver was that Kenya and East Africa was going to be dispatching 1,000 police officers to the Caribbean island, to Haiti, in order supposedly to try to restore a kind of order. But the Kenyan judiciary intervened thus far, although my understanding is that President Ruto has not given up. I do know that activists, at least in the United States, were hotly opposed to this idea of Kenyan police coming to Haiti. Fresh on their minds was the rather unfortunate developments that resulted when Brazilian soldiers were sent as a kind of peacekeeping mission at the behest of the United Nations to Kenya. They helped, I'm afraid to say, to spread disease. They were involved in all manner of transgressions. My own opinion is that CARICOM, the Caribbean community, which has taken a kind of vanguard role with regard to what's going on in Haiti, really needs to lobby seriously to make sure that Cuba is not excluded from that particular debate, not only because Cuba is a close neighbor of Haiti, and Cuba, of course, is a major supplier of foreign aid of various sorts to Haiti, including medics, but also it would be a blow against the U.S.-sponsored blockade of Cuba, with Washington seeking to punish Cuba just like it sought to punish Haiti ever since 1804 when the first Black Republic came into being. And by the way, listen to the interview we did yesterday on kpfk.org on Freedom Now with the scholar discussing the so-called reparations that Haiti paid to the French enslavers in the 1820s. It's very interesting. Her conclusion is that this was really that the indemnity and what happened to Haiti was more lucrative for the exploiters than slavery itself. And that many, believe it or not, abolitionists were implicated in terms of this. It's a fascinating interview, and I must say, typical of the content we deliver weekly on Freedom Now, KPFK Los Angeles, and of course, the Benefit in Leimert Park, Saturday, February 3rd, 1 to 3, will further exemplify that honorable trend.
So you in an event like that, how many books would you sell on a day like that?
Oh, it's hard to say. I mean, it depends on. I think the place holds 300. So, if that gives you any idea. Although I've noticed that in many of these events, one person will oftentimes purchase more than one book. And in fact, we're shipping a number of my past books to this event. It won't just be the current ones; it'll be past books as well. So we're looking to, when we had this event in Washington, D.C., I guess it was in October 2023, we raised about, I think it was $10,000 for WPFW, the Pacifica station in Washington, and we're looking to exceed that in Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm. And I think we've gone over time, so thank you very much, and we will definitely be speaking to you next week, sir.
Good luck to you.
And I would like to thank Melinda Francis and Lisa Watson for her technical brilliance. And once again, I guess we'll see everyone in the whirlwind. And next week we'll be raising a little funds. Do you want to say anything about that, Melinda?
Yeah, and if people want to get ahead on it, people can go to blackpower96.org/donate. We're always looking for funds, so please donate. And listen next week and donate then too. Donate twice.
All right.
Or 3 times every time we're fundraising. Yeah.
All right. And once again, thank Lisa for making us sound good as usual.